this tweet came out Wednesday, so we gotta address this real quick. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said Cory protest was, but that phone calls with Pelosi over the weekend were impactful and influential in CDC's decision on eviction moratorium. Psaki praised Pelosi's advocacy and commitment to see what was possible. If you're still denying about how much this was all by design and how the squad just played their role on the team, they did their part. The conservative Democrats were able to leave like they wanted to. The squad got to look like they were the fighters in the situation. And the fact that, and this is an example of how abusive we feel that their relationship in the Democratic Party is, because Jen Psaki didn't even give them real credit for doing what they did. In fact, she gave far more credit to Nancy Pelosi for putting this back in place. Are you serious? Even though the squad ask and demand this situation were still inadequate, the fact that they can't even get proper from their establishment. The establishment has you as suckers, because this continuing to strengthen the abusive relationship that progressives have with the Democratic Party. And I know they love it, because they're at least going to continue to get those progressive voters reeled in by the results of what they did. And the fact that they had so many pro-squatters be a large majority of the people that attended those throughout those few days, it only reinforces their points further. But the frustrating part is there's going to be too many people that don't see how they're part of the problem by being complicit to this Democratic Party. And this protester that Chuck Modi spoke to is going to illustrate the problem with the squad settling on this 90% eviction moratorium extension. May not even be close to lasting that long overall.
No one is behind you on the steps. Could you tell me why?
They kicked us across the street because while we were here previously, we were guests of Representatives Cori Bush and AOC, and now that they have reached a temporary resolution, they're not officially hosting this anymore. So we are just common people, and we've been kicked across the yard to the grassy area there. We were told that we weren't allowed to have signs because that would be a demonstration and you would need a permit for that, and we can assemble more than 19 people at a time because that would be a demonstration and you need a permit for that, and we don't have that.
But those rules didn't apply when Representative Cori Bush and AOC and others were here.
No, they allowed us to be here with chairs and food and umbrellas and stuff. We were allowed to sit here overnight, and once the representatives left, then our graces were up with them.
And you were mentioning, and so folks know that you've been somebody who has been out the post-George Floyd protests, since the beginning. And you were commenting to me in the last few days how nice the police were.
It was weird because normally it's us versus them, cops versus protesters. We get beaten, we get tear gas, we get yelled at, cursed at, pushed around, punched, run over with bikes. And while we were here, they still enforced the rules, but they were very polite and professional about it, which I thought might have been a difference between Capitol Police versus MPD, but I think it's just because the representatives were out here with us and they were actually the ones hosting us.
What was the type of behavior the police were in the last few days that you were seeing that was unusual?
They weren't cursing at us. They weren't shooting at us. They were very professional, like how you would expect police officers to act. And that hasn't been the case over the last year. That's why it was noticeably awkward.
No one is behind you on the steps. Could you tell me?
This is the double-edged sword of the left, and with the squad right now. We are very with how little they have achieved because they have the margins capable in the House of trying to use their leverage to extract more from this Biden administration. But at the same time, we still need their help when it comes to helping with direct action. And this right here is great evidence of why. Now that they've decided to pack up and settle with this temporary kick of the can down the road, you've got people who want to be committed to the fight until, for example, more people, everyone is covered. Not only that, but coming up with a way to take care of the overdue rent people have, whether it's giving renters money to use or paying off the landlords. That's the next level here. Because if all you do is temporarily increase the eviction moratorium, it also increases the amount of money that people are going to potentially have to pay. And the fact that the AOC brushed off the idea of how they'll do it, because if they had a real plan, AOC wouldn't have told Frank Analysis that, oh, we'll deal with that later. They don't have a plan right now. So the only way going forward is to make sure that we continue to come out and put pressure on these politicians. And what we really need to have happen is to change the makeup of the people there right now. We need more people who are independent and who are willing to really challenge politicians in the same way that some journalists like Max Blumenthal and Frank Analysis were. We need more people who are willing to back up people like that to change the makeup of these protests because they flat out need to continue. And more people need to do this. It doesn't just need to happen at the Capitol. People need to show up in front of these politicians' houses and put pressure on them that way as well. That way, there's more opportunity for people to do it who are just exclusively in the DC area. And that's why it's such a problem with this double-edged sword that the left has with the squad right now, because if they continue to rotate people in and out of these at the Capitol steps, after the result of the extension, you would have ended up making it easier for more people to change the dynamic of that. But since they've left, this will temporarily diminish the impact. Someone can get permits to increase demonstration. So I'm also going to play this interview that Max Blumenthal had with Dylan from GWU, who debated with Frank Analysis, I think Sunday night, on Force the Vote. Even though I disagree with him here, he is definitely right to bring up this issue that is going to cause problems with this current extension.
We have a few people out here right now, and the first and foremost thing we're saying is the 10% of Americans right now that aren't covered by the moratorium absolutely deserve to be covered. When we started this protest with Cori Bush and Ayanna Pressley and Ilhan Omar and AOC and everyone that's gotten involved, the demand that we had was reinstate the moratorium, period. It wasn't reinstate most of the moratorium or some of the moratorium, but all of the moratorium. So members have gone home to their districts to talk about getting rental assistance to their constituents, but we can still be here, and we're here to demand that the president order the CDC to extend the moratorium to everyone, just like we had before it ran out at the end of July.
Okay, and there is a Supreme Court case again, is it?
Yeah, there might be a Supreme Court case, yeah.
Can you just briefly give us a rundown of the legal battle?
This moratorium was brought to a court case a few months ago, and it held up only 5-4 because Brett Kavanaugh wrote a concurring opinion, his own take on the case, which said, I will extend the eviction moratorium, but the pandemic will be done by July 31st, so we won't need it after that. And after that, you'll need congressional approval to extend it, because there's no authority for the president to do this on his own outside of a public health crisis.
Right.
And we're worried that, no matter the conditions with COVID, Brett Kavanaugh is a very conservative judge, and he might just hold to his promise and say, no matter what the facts on the ground are, no matter what is happening with Delta and the variants, that we're just ending the eviction moratorium. And so my worry is that even with the limitations that Biden's put on this policy, he sees it as an overreach, and he kills the eviction moratorium even with the 90% we have now.
And then what?
If that happens, Congress has to act, and that will mean needing a majority in the House and a majority in the Senate, potentially even 60 votes in the Senate if we haven't gotten rid of the filibuster by then, and that's a whole disaster. What my hope would be that there is a carve out for this. We know we can carve stuff out of the filibuster if the majority leader is willing to do that. We will need 50 votes for that, and then that's down to our favorite senators in the world, Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema.
Alright, so before I play more of this interview, we're really going to have to hope that this doesn't get shot down before next month, because what does happen next month is budget reconciliation, and if this can at least carry us to at least next month, then there's a chance that at least Nancy Pelosi could call back the House sooner to start budget reconciliation. And what absolutely needs to be included in that budget reconciliation is some type of eviction moratorium extension, probably a way to extend funds to cover the renters and landlords, because right now what we're seeing is states are being really stingy with money out there. And there's power-hungry landlords who will want to get people out. And the other problem is, however, there's one thing that could have worked much longer ago, and that was if every renter was considered Section 8. That could have been a perfectly safe and legal way to cover through the duration of this pandemic, and that's a point that's not being talked about enough. Let's get to this next part.
Something about this.
So it will come down to right-wing Democrats in the Senate.
Yeah, that will be the margin of victory if we have to do this.
And do you think it's possible to mobilize something here? You've been removed from the Capitol steps, as everyone can see behind you. The police pushed you away, and I don't know, about 10 people here now. Do you think, having 100 people here, 1,000 people here could change the dynamic at all?
Absolutely. The more the merrier. We got a few people out here right now. We're doing well. It's very temperate in DC, so please come out if you can. Send stuff if you can. We had an amazing movement there, and like Max just said, the DC police have kicked us out because we're no longer guests of the members of Congress. So maybe that changes at some point. We're working on that. But if it doesn't, more people out here is better. We're going to try and get permits for this to be a formal event space rather than an impromptu gathering. And the more pressure that we can put on Congress to codify this into law rather than just having this be an executive action, the more secure that tenants will be in this country and the less likely we are to see more evictions.
Right. And do you want to state your name?
Yeah, my name is Dylan. I'm a student at the George Washington University for Law. I just came out here on Saturday night, very early in the morning, because I saw that Cori Bush had tweeted about this, and we're so grateful for everything that everyone has done so far, and we're so close, and we want a huge victory together, and we want to keep that ball rolling, because there's still people out there that need our help.
Definitely. And like you can see, what people are sitting on or sleeping on right now. It's just bare blankets, so there's definitely a need for supplies. We got sprinklers over here, so definitely there's a big need here to keep it going.
Yeah, we're doing our best. For anyone there who's watching, who does see this, we've received amazing support from all over the country so far, and we want to keep this going. So please, whatever you can.
Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much.
Okay, that right there is going to be a major obstacle on the hands for the Democratic Party. Because even if they can somehow work this in to budget reconciliation, what we've often seen is Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin think anything marginally better for the Democrats to get done in the name of this one-way bipartisanship. So that's gotta be addressed in a big way. And we also need to help people like Dylan expand on the ask with the whole rent distribution. There's millions of dollars spread out to the states, and helping actually protect these people, and also in a way that is also beneficial financially. And Max Lass added, personally, I think the eviction moratorium faces too many institutional obstacles to survive for long within a system designed to advance the interest of the landlords. But mass participation in the sit-in could broaden the demands and call to cancel the rent. Also, if you do come out to these events, make sure to add demands of other related issues, class related, because if we don't have freedom of press, we don't have a chance to make serious ground. If we don't constantly the amount of money that the United States sends overseas on imperialism and intervention would more than easily address the needs of the people in this country. We gotta be able to do that too. With COVID spiking up, gotta be able to make another push for Medicare for all. Because when it comes down to it, these issues are all interconnected. And we need to not throw away opportunities to advance other related issues at this time. And we also have to make sure people aren't keeping, like we a lot, before the school left, because the last thing we need is to have these gatekeepers obfuscate and cover the politicians, and that's very much a top-down issue. Unfortunately, I hope it could just survive until sometime next month. That way, hopefully this better solutions could be into budget reconciliation, because right now that's really the only way Democrats can get anything done with just the 50 votes. Everything else needs 60, and Democrats are pretty much fucked. And even worse than that is the fact that there will still be Democrats who mock us, kick, and spit in our faces like they did with the minimum wage, when only 42 voted in favor of it, even though it still needed 60. Just know, stuff like this is going to be a major obstacle towards making any substantial improvement here. And some real estate mega donor funneled $1 million to House Democrats super PAC to shut down the House without extension before the moratorium. And this is why people like Franco were right to challenge the squad to give more answers on this. Because, corporate people are just going to fudge shit up behind the scenes in the meantime until the Supreme Court inevitably ends this temporary moratorium once again. And even though they sent one, you think these people aren't capable of funneling even more money to make sure nothing really happens? And you see the problem with... And this just goes to show you how complicit the squad is with the evil that permeates with the Democratic Party. Because if they were true fighters right now, there would still be someone there to lead the effort to doing more than what they are right now. And that's why it is no victory. And it's really insulting that you have people argue that this, just doing that alone is. And it really just sad to see how much people's standards have been defeated over these past few decades. And how not enough people are displaying spine and wanting to demand more from their politicians. And even though there's some people who disagree with force of vote, for example, there are at least people who still get the important part of demanding more. But there's also a lot of them who are just perfectly fine with what's going down right now, and they're going to feign outrage and sympathy if nothing else is done to improve these conditions. And those are people we can't take seriously, because they're the real dum-dum left, not us. Them. That's Anna Kasparian, Emma Vigilant, Cenk Uygur, Sam Cedar, and anyone, David Pakman, Benjamin Dixon. Those are the real dum-dum left here. Not the people like Jimmy Dore, Fred Hampton Left, Frank Analysis, The Gray Zone. We are consistent and principled, a lot more consistent and principled in comparison to those people. We are not alike. Now I'm going to play you a local news story to show you the problem with the lack of inaction with rent control and how this is related to the eviction moratorium right now.
People to live with them. The Colorado Future Center released a report today showing that 3 out of every 10 households are actually doubling up. That's 680,000 homes with children, older parents, or even friends that are living together. Right now in Denver, there is a shortage of available rental units and even fewer affordable. one renter who saw a sharp jump in his monthly payments.
$50 per month, and now he says it's time for him to move.
I know that this is more of like a price gouging thing.
Blake Kittredge has been living in Denver for 4 years. Recently, his building told him $100 a month.
So the entire reason they're raising my rent like they are is because they believe that they can get that on the market, so they want to push me out.
He rents $1,650 a month. His landlords just told him his rent for the next year is going
half my monthly income.
Ron Throop, an associate professor of real estate at about the rental market here in Denver. He says currently rent is up 100.
Largest rent increase quarterly we've ever seen in this survey.
The reason?
We're out of how many new units can be built.
But catching up with demand won't happen for maybe a year or more because construction has slowed. That's not good news for rent prices.
In the short run, you shouldn't expect them to continue to go up.
Blake says if this keeps up, he may have to reconsider living in Colorado.
I'm just going to have to accept the fact that you're not be able to live here forever.
Now, Denver builders have typically been slow to get those units completed, but consider that supply chain and increased cost of materials, and that's not supposed. In Denver, Michael Abatha, covering Colorado First.
All right, Michael, thank you. So Denver is working on providing housing for the homeless. The proposed plan includes creating and preserving 7,000 homes, preserving 950 income-restricted rentals, reducing the average length someone experiences homelessness to 90 days, and reducing the eviction filings by 25%. You can find more information about issues at cbsdenver.com.
All right, here. I'm gonna go over the problem with those highlights because.
And right now, more families, Colorado families, are taking in other people to live with them.
It's important to highlight the fact that we need way more income restricted rentals than just 950. In fact, we need a federal mandate that restricts the amount that landlords can increase each year. And simple answer would be it has to be tied to basic inflation. If you raise it all, the most you can increase it is based on inflation. Because what you're seeing is with rent increases, it's well beyond. It's quite a bit beyond it. For example, you're at least seeing an average of 8 to 10% of the increase per year. And if you're lucky, that's only like 4% at the downside. And that's why we can't just we have to curb this greed of price gouging by landlords. And an example of a place which has failed to try to do rent control is California has had it, I believe, the last couple of elections. They've tried to pass it in a down ballot measure, but they have failed to get that passed. And a big reason of that is because of California having so many rich people than compared to a state like Colorado. And I think if we ever, I would hope to see someone push a rent control measure here, because I believe like pass. And even though Colorado isn't exactly getting the opportunity of the illusion of voting progressives in at a federal level. Well, we are large voting the right way on down ballot measures. And I would like to see rent control be enacted here. I believe that people here would make sure that passes, especially given that the state of Colorado has the highest level of voter participation in the whole United States. And even if it's screwed over at a federal level, there's still plenty of opportunity to try to improve conditions at the local level. And then, while I do understand people who don't want to participate in voting, I try to say to at least make sure to not check out of voting locally, because that's where you're more likely to get better change. And the great shining example of that is Kashama Sawant of Seattle, of the Socialist Alternative Party. That's where independents and third parties have a chance to win. And that's been a big issue with third parties and why they're not going to have a chance to be successful is due to the fact they put all their eggs in the federal basket. And we need a more of a bottom-up approach with a third party, although it's that double-edged sword of if you manage to reach 5%, that gives you some more funding to work with, to use to have more success locally. However, this third point, I should say, is not where we should be at. Cutting homelessness down to 90 days? That's not serious enough. You gotta get to the point where we cut down homelessness to 0 days. But the dynamic that's going to make that really difficult is the fact that landlords and real estate sharks want to price gouge class, and very few people are going to be able to keep up with it. Nextly, reducing eviction filings by just 25%. Come on. We have to make that a much higher number. Like 75-80% would be more in line with being serious about cutting down eviction. Because even in socialism, you're still going to have a bit of a tiered society. Even though there's people who think that tiers will completely be gone in socialism, that'll still exist. All we want is the floor to raise the bottom up more. And that means even if people do get evicted, that means they should be able to go somewhere, have temporary homeless housing. That way they can get back on their feet. And give them the same type of freedom to do that without the restrictions that several homeless shelters right now. And this is not just exclusive to Denver Los Angeles, Seattle, and or any other major city where cost of living is spiking exponentially. This is happening even in places that you think is still cheaper. And this just exposes an example of what we've got to do going forward. We can't just settle for asking to prevent evictions. It has to be some serious reform demands as well. And if you're going to protest, continue this. Rent reform has to be, and I would like to see that become a serious issue pushed. I would have to look over some examples more closely of rent reform, but the time is now to push for it. Because even if you temporarily protect people from eviction and cover previous back pay, they could still end up evicted if they can't keep up with the price hike. And we gotta make sure that base is covered as well.